Hello, 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 everyone. Thanks for joining us again on another lovely Sunday. This is Soul Sister Sunday podcast. This is Kim.
And this is Jay. And once again, we're so excited to be back. Thank you to everyone who has been listening in, tuning in, liking our statuses, and following us on Instagram. Thank you. We really appreciate it. We feel the love. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Everyone who interacts with us on Instagram has made it a great experience. We see the messages, we see the comments.
So today's episode, we're going to be focusing on unhealthy relationships and their importance in our lives and what that means to us. And we're going to talk briefly about what unhealthy relationships look like and why they're important to us, or why they should be important to us, and what role they play in everybody's lives, and how we can change the perspective on how we interact with people who have been unhealthy to us, or times that we have been unhealthy to other people as well.
Very informative episode. I think it'll be fun to kind of dig into it and tell different stories. But before we get too deep into it, we do have a card.
Yes, and this week we pulled from the Spirit Animal Oracle deck by Colette Baron Reid. And of course, it's an Oracle deck, so it's very different than the traditional tarot deck. And this week we pulled a card, and the card that we pulled is number 39, Moth Spirit, and that is Surrender Now. And I will go ahead and read the Oracle message from the book, and then we can talk about it. So in the book, it says, Moth Spirit asks, what is guiding you right now? Are you in alignment with spirit, or pursuing something or someone with so much tenacity that it has become a compulsive or addiction? Are you so intoxicated by a potential relationship or opportunity that you can't think straight? Hard work and dedication are virtues, and love, of course, is a beautiful thing. However, when Moth Spirit appears, it is time to consider if you have gone over the edge in a relentless pursuit. Workaholism, overeating, perfectionism, or addiction to certainty or even to a person may be your current vice. The form of your addiction does not matter so much as awareness of the consequences of remaining persistent when moderation is needed. Let go of your excessive energy by channeling it in more than one direction. The fire burns hot, and you do not want to be engulfed by your passion to the exclusion of all the other pursuits that matter to you. Now is the time for surrender and radical acceptance, so that your drive does not cause you to flee or to fight. Spirit wants you to release your need for certainty and control so that you can relax into a more balanced way of using your Moth Spirit energy. Banish the shoulds and must, so that you can enjoy what is as you allow for what might be.
I would say that ties in perfectly to today's discussion.
I do too. I think this really talks into the idea of why unhealthy relationships are so important, but as well, it makes you question what you're going to do in your interactions with unhealthy relationships. So let's go ahead and dig deep into this conversation now that the Moth Spirit has fired our engine.
Let's start off. I think a good place to start off with would be our relationship with our parents.
Okay.
Only because like our parents, they are the ones that would teach us and we would learn from them, right? So even with relationships, we learn how to interact and how to handle people based on our parents. So why not start there?
Yeah, it all starts with our parents. They are the first teachers of how we interact in relationships. They are the first relationships that we have, and they are the blueprint that we continuously use throughout our lives. So definitely. So then, Kim, talk to us. Tell us, how do you feel that your parents failed you or helped you in determining what kind of blueprint you have in relationships?
Yikes. Okay. So as far as maybe failing me, I would say it's the way they kind of taught me to communicate with people. Because I've always been very quiet, very shy, very laid back. But I learned that from them because my parents don't really talk or communicate or interact in a certain way. So when I get out into the real world, knowing what I know from home, that made it a little difficult kind of to make friends and connect. So that's how they failed. I'm lacking a little bit. I've gotten better, but I'm lacking. And a way that it has helped me, or a positive from that, I'm very caring with people. I'm very kind and gentle with people. And that comes from having parents who taught me how to be kind, how to be compassionate, how to have sympathy for people in situations. So copying that when going out into the real world can be seen as helpful. Of course, there's limits to it. I'm still learning how to set that boundary with being so giving, but it helped.
That's so interesting. I think for me, I think for the most part, it falls on the failure of my parent. My dad didn't really have a lot to do with my blueprint in the making, but I think my mom took the cake on that. And for the most part, she taught me a lot of poor ways of handling myself in relation to other people. And there was never a conversation of, well, you have to have relationships with other people, and this is how that looks, and this is how you should treat other people, and this is how you should allow someone else to treat you. It was always more of a do as I say, not as I do type of situation. And I think that is such a failure of a showcasing to a child, because the child doesn't understand and they only replicate. So, a perfect example, I would have to go back and think of this one time when my mom was chasing after her boyfriend at the time, and she wanted to see if he was stepping out on her, rightfully so. I mean, to each their own, right? But the only difference was that she brought me along and my fellow cousin along as well. And so we got to see the interaction of that. And to me, that was oh, well, women tend to do this because they need to make sure that their man is not stepping out on them. And that is the blueprint that I grew up on. And that is a big failure. Why do you need to go chasing after a man knowing damn well that he's already doing what he wants to do? Stay at home, keep your pride intact. You don't have to chase after anybody. So for me, it was the agreements that I made, or that domestication that happened when I was very young, did pass over to my adulthood. And it wasn't until I became aware of the toxicity of my blueprint that I started to change it. I think for the positive or the good things that she taught me about relationships was just the loyalty. I'm a very loyal person, but I am loyal to the degree of I will be loyal to someone who's loyal to me. When you stop being loyal to me, then there's no need for me to continue being loyal to you. The only loyalty that is 100% true is for myself.
Interesting. Very interesting.
And all of that, I think that unhealthy relationships, specifically with your parents, or maybe even so with anybody, I think unhealthy relationships help you identify what you don't want or what doesn't serve you in a relationship. When I'm thinking about a relationship between mother and daughter, I think about all the unhealthy mechanisms and all the unhealthy exchanges that my mother and I had, and how much I didn't want to repeat that with my own child. So in a way, it was deemed very unhealthy for me, but it flipped over to the healthy side for my child. So even though it affected me in an awful way, I do think that it benefits my child.
Okay. You saw where it was wrong, and now you're trying to correct it with your child, as you should. You don't have to repeat the damaging things that you learned before.
Yes.
As far as because I grew up in a 2-parent household, so my mom never really had like a boyfriend or fling or anything like that to go chase after. But again, it goes back to how her and my dad interacted with each other. My mom was very much I don't even know what I say. It's like old fashioned. This idea that the man is supposed to provide, while we just sit there and take it and take it and take it. So that can be unhealthy too, because why am I sitting around not doing anything expecting a man to take care of me?
Yeah.
And I held on to that for a little bit. I did until I got older, and I was like, yeah, this shit ain't it. I gotta have my own.
Yeah. And I also question that idea too. Like, if you want to sit there and provide, you're allowing someone to make you a victim, because at that point, that person can do whatever they want to you, and you have no other choice but to take it. And that's unhealthy as well. So you're telling me if that person decides to cheat on you with Betty, Susie, and Lori down the street, then you have no choice but to be like, okay, well, here's your dinner. You pay the bills. You're my man. You're the head of the household, and I cannot do anything without you. Oh, excuse me until next week.
He had to get the old ladies down the street though. Betty, Lori.
They do sound like old people, old women's names.
But no, that's exactly what I've learned from it. Like I tried to put myself in a position where I let the man handle everything, and I felt like I didn't have shit for myself. He had control over the house, had control over this, and I'm just sitting here pretty much a puppy dog. Yeah, no. I tried it, mama. It didn't work. I got to do it my own way now.
Yeah.
And then like,
isn't that the equivalency of like a trophy wife?
okay, yeah, I would say so. Not exactly, but it's pretty close.
I mean, the only difference is that the trophy wife, you're working with millions and billions of dollars.
Okay, true. That's what I'm thinking. A trophy wife is usually all made up and makeup all the time, like, pretty girl.
Exactly.
Instead of looking just average. So
yeah, it's trophy wives have a separate wing in the mansion. You can go cheat on your wing. We're good.
oh no, I don't have to be that. It sounds cool, but no, thank you. No, nothing against nobody who does it, but not over here.
You know what? Yeah, that's true too. I don't have anything against anybody playing that role, but at the same time, understand that that role is very diminishing to the woman or the man that you ought to be. I believe, in my opinion, just because that takes away your autonomy, that takes away your independence, and it doesn't matter whether you have everything that you ever needed. If your spirit feels betrayed, if your spirit feels hurt, then that carries more weight than anything else. So to me, if my spirit is good, then I don't care who's around me or who's not around me.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. So you kind of mentioned a little bit about the absence of your dad. So that kind of plays a role in how it can be unhealthy, right?
Yeah, I believe so. I think absence creates unhealthy blueprints because you go out into the world seeking something that you don't even know that you're missing. It's like I'm looking for something that I don't even know what it looks like, and I don't even know how it feels. All I know is that there's a void. And yes, I do believe so. I think that creates a easy target for you to fall victim into or fall victim of a lot of situations that you otherwise wouldn't.
Okay, yes, that's true. But we also have to remember too that absence doesn't have to be a physical absence. My dad was right there, and some days he wouldn't even talk. So having
That's
someone that's
true.
not really connecting emotionally, or not having like what's the other word I'm looking for? Emotional connection, a more
Energy.
energy, daddy daughter connection. Yeah, that can play a role in how we handle relationships too.
Yeah,
I
that's
grew
so
up not
true.
really knowing how to have conversations with the opposite sex because my dad barely talked to us at home.
That's so true. Thank you for bringing that up because I do believe that is so true. A lot of people think that in society, oh, because you grew up in a two-parent household, you had it better off than I did. That's not necessarily true. Sometimes
That's bull.
single parent households create better people than two-parent households.
And I agree with it. I'll tell anybody that in a heartbeat. A two-parent household don't mean shit. Okay, yes, your parents were there every day, but if your parents didn't have a good balance of how to run a household, or if you didn't really have a connection with one parent or anything like that, you better off being in a one-parent household sometimes. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying that my dad never talked. I mean, I know what the man sound like. He talked. But
would you be able to identify his voice?
I know that Southern drawl anywhere. I don't know his voice.
Shout out to Granddaddy. We love you.
But he didn't. And it could be the age too, because my dad was pretty old when he had my little sister and I. So maybe because of the age difference, he didn't know how to really connect with us. Or even him being still stuck in his ways, the way he grew up, he may have thought that's the way that you raise kids. But all that to say that The absence doesn't have to be physical.
Yes. Yeah. The absence does not have to be physical at all. And you could be physically there and yet be 1,000 miles away from your child. And that creates some sort of emptiness and some sort of hollowness in your child. And that is problematic. That's an unhealthy relationship. But at the same time, like we said earlier, it can turn out to be something that is used and harnessed and can have a great outcome. But that's depending on upon the child, not the parent.
You mentioned it for like 2 or 3 seconds a few minutes ago, how you and your daughter are different than how you and your parents were. What are some other ways that you see yourself having a relationship with your daughter that's healthy, or even some ways where you feel you can improve a little bit?
Oh, that's a really tough one. I think sometimes I find myself, how the saying goes, oh, the older you get, the more that you are like your parent. And sometimes I catch that glimpse of myself and I'm just like, wow, like I see my mother in me in this way. And more recently, I have been able to accept that. But at the same time, it's more of grace that I am giving myself. Like, yeah, I see my parent in me and I'm going to be graceful in that, but at the same time I'm going to challenge myself to continuously overcome that. And I'll give a story of something that happened recently that gave me that perspective and allowed me to change that narrative within myself. So, not too long ago, it was morning time and we were running late. My daughter was filling up her water bottle at home because she takes water to school. And, we were in a hurry and she was feeling rushed, rightfully so. And she tripped over something and spilled her water. And she was just very frustrated and overwhelmed. And she started grunting. And I was feeling overwhelmed. And we were just having a very rushed morning and just feeling, both of us were feeling very overwhelmed. And I told her, I'm like, you need to stop. Like, right now is not the time. And I put a dead bolt on it, like completely quit it. We need to go. We'll worry about that later. You need to refill your water. Let's go. And, we were running really late. She got to school late, whatever. I came back home feeling guilty. I came back home and looked at the mess, cleaned it up, took some time for myself. And I felt badly about how I handled the situation because I knew I had mishandled it. And that was the moment where I saw my mother in me and I saw the reaction of my mother in me. And I think that is, first of all, I think that is one of the things that showcases unhealthy relationships the most, and that blueprint that you're growing up with in these moments where you're overwhelmed, where you have no time to think. Though that's the moment where you see your blueprint and how scarring it is. So I decided to write a letter to my daughter and I apologized. And I said, I'm sorry that you felt overwhelmed. And I am sorry that I wasn't able to help you overcome that. And I am sorry that instead of helping you and guiding you through your high emotions, I stopped them and I showcased you something that is not true. I'm like, next time, you're in a high emotion and I'm in a high emotion, then let's get out of it together. And I'm like, I hope you're able to forgive me. I hope that you're able to still see me as the parent that loves you and cares about you. And you see me as, the person that is trying, because I'm not perfect. But at the same time, I want to know, and I want you to know that I take accountability and I take responsibility for my actions and my lack of, because you are my daughter and I want to showcase you how to deal with high emotions. And I wrote this little letter to her. I made an envelope of the letter. I sat it in my car seat, and when I picked her up, I gave it to her. She read it, and she's all like, "Mama, I appreciate that. Next time we both will sound." She read it out loud, and in the letter I said, "We'll both sound like dinosaurs." Getting our high frustration out together. And she's all like, "Mama, I like that idea. We'll try that next time." And I want to hold myself accountable to that, just because we are our child's teachers, and I don't want her to be getting the wrong blueprint from me. Like, that stops with me.
Oh, that's very nice. It's very nice, but I think I like it best that you were able to apologize to her, because a lot of parents do not apologize to their kids, and that makes things very unhealthy. The kid
Yes.
will grow up not knowing how to properly apologize because their parents never apologized to them or showed them how.
Yes, yes. And a proper apology is not just an I'm sorry. Like a proper apology is an I'm sorry with an action, with a reassurance, because it's so important. I think that builds assurance in a child. I want my daughter to be sure that I am her mother and I'm going to do whatever I can to be that mother for her. I agree with that. More people, more parents should apologize to their children, and more parents should display themselves as humans in front of their kids. We're not perfect. I grew up in this idea from my parent that I couldn't judge her parenting. She would always say, don't judge the way I parent you, because you are nobody to judge me in my parenting of you. And I always thought that was so odd, because I can judge you. You're parenting me, you're affecting me. I will carry your parenting of me for the rest of my life. And I do have a right to judge you.
What is that to tell a child, though? I don't see myself ever telling my child, don't judge my parenting. I may say things like, I don't really know what I'm doing, so bear with me. I'll tell her that, but I'll never tell her, don't judge me. That takes away from a person when you tell them that.
Yes, it does. And for the longest, it was the idea of, oh, she's doing what she can, what's best